Cool. Okay, so next talk is the Mango Master, Nick Marshall.
Oh, I think, yeah. This is what modern publishing is. Your devs come up and just steal your talk from you. It's dark days for everyone involved.
Well, he is my publisher, so you know.
I don't know what's happened there. I think, did you break my? Did you use your Mac skills to break my Windows? No, you literally have. Yeah, nice one. Yes. All right. This is perfectly loaded up, and then Byron says, "No, I want to sell an Xbox to everyone." Right. Hi everyone. I am Nick Marshall, and I'm genuinely really happy to be here today to talk to you guys about the world of retail. The talk is called Beyond Steam. It's about mainly focusing on PC, Mac and Linux, which is a massively growing market that I work in. I am both assistant producer at Mastertronic, which is an indie publisher, and I'm also the day-to-day manager of Get Games Go, which is a store that works with AAA publishers and indie developers selling Steam keys. And I love my jobs, and I'm really happy to be here. I've had to cut a lot of content out of this talk, so if there's anything I've glossed over, feel free to ask me a question at the end or grab me afterwards when we're having a cup of tea outside. So, a little bit more about me. I couldn't find any normal pictures of me doing my job. These are all from the sort of Mastertronic archive. That's me recording some audio for a game in a very MacGyver recording setup. And that's me promoting a game. And yeah, I look like the guy from the episode of Space. Anyway, I have worked about 3 years now, and I love games. And I love retail, somehow. But the world of retail that I work in is very fragmented, and there's not always some good news. So I'm going to start with the bad news. Bad news is I have no miracles to offer. Unlike someone else, I have no miracles to offer. And if you're here today hoping I was going to magically tell you how to get on Steam, that's how you get on Steam generally. You have a successful green light, or you get a publisher or distributor. That's the main path. There are other ways, I'm sure, but I don't know them, and if anyone else here knows them, they're probably not going to tell us all. So beyond Steam, this is a quick run through of the market that I work in. You may be familiar with these stores, but I know it's a very broad audience here, and I'm keeping the talk as broad as possible. So this is my world, Get Games, and our arch rival Green Man Gaming, and then Gamersgate, international stores selling a wide range of games across the world. Then we have more regional outfits like Nuvum, which is a very popular and rapidly growing South American retail store. GameStop, which is the digital branch of the big American store. And Amazon have a massive US presence selling indie games and AAA games digitally, but they haven't really expanded that to the UK and Europe. It does exist, but it's not a massive thing yet. The bundle sites that we all hope our titles get in a certain one of these at a certain point in its product life, if you're on PC. These are all big parts of our market. They're very popular with our customers, and they do bring in a lot of sales, but of course at much lower prices. And then finally we have some indie-specific retailers. Again, this is totally non-exhaustive. There are people I've missed off, and hope none of them are actually here today. Desura, which is an indie platform, Indie Game Stand, and then finally Itch.io, which is a very new site. Is anyone here using Itch.io? Couple of hands, wonderful. This is a way for you to sell your game in your own user-created store and keep a larger chunk of the revenue, which sounds wonderful and kind of is wonderful, especially if you've got a project that's a very low sort of, low price you're charging for. It's pay what you want, or you're looking for donations. It's a wonderful little site. Finally, burning in the fire of hell, in my opinion, is the grey market. I'll come back to this later on. Hang on one sec. I think so every time I step, if I move, everything crackles. It's actually quite terrifying. Okay, right, carry on, it's fine. So why would you sell your game into this world that I work in? Well, for starters, there's an opportunity for more sales. Your game's in more stores, there's more chance for someone to see it and buy it. There's greater visibility for your game compared to Steam. I'm going to show some scary stuff later, which will show just how bad this Steam discoverability problem actually is. And you can also actually have a pre-order campaign in other retailers. Indie developers on Steam, unless you're the next big indie hit already, Steam generally won't offer you a chance to run a pre-order campaign. You may be able to set a page up and get a demo up, but you can't have incentives or campaigns. Most developers don't get the opportunity. Your game just magically spawns there one day. The day you obviously upload the build and set it live. Useful sales data for comparison, and then finally all these stores you've just seen, they all generally share the same customers to a large extent. I don't think there's any customers out there who don't use Steam, because all the games we sell are Steam. And Greenman Gaming, they mainly sell Steam, and Gamersgate mainly sell Steam, and the Humble Bundle keys are mainly Steam keys, or if they're Android keys, then it's slightly different. But in PC, Mac and Linux, it's all about Steam. So, briefly about Get Games, as I mentioned, we're a small retail store. We started in 2009 with a sort of quirky attitude and outlook. These are some of our sort of artwork from recent sales. We wanted to be the best little shop on the internet. We're much smaller than our competitors, but we have a much smaller team. So right now, we have no one working full-time on Get Games. Get Games, everyone at Mastertronic who works on Get Games has a Mastertronic job. So Jordan and I, my colleague, who run most of the day-to-day business, we're also assistant producers on indie games. We're actually working, doing QA and various other stuff on indie titles. And that's been the way it's been since day one. A couple of years ago, Get Games was basically run by the guys who now run Devolver. So that was a very interesting time when you're trying to run a retail store and at the same time launch one of the biggest indie labels on the planet. That was an interesting time in our history, and it's still interesting today. And that's the kind of artwork we do, because we're odd. So if Steam is like an elephant, it's a platform, and it's huge, and people love it, and it has 8.5 million concurrent users it reached in December of last year. That's 8.5 million people on Steam at the same time. And that's a huge amount. Now, they weren't on the store. They were playing games or just had it loaded on their computer. But that store was always just one click away, or popping up as an advert, and it was always there. By contrast, if that elephant is 8.5 million, if you put it into weight terms, then Get Games is about the size of my cat. At our peak of our history, we had about 10,000 people visit the site in like one moment, so to speak. The smallest moment we can measure is about 20 minutes. And that is a big size difference, but we're not aiming to be Steam, we're aiming to sell games with a very specific purpose, and we're nimble in that. I mean, anyone who's dealt with Steam or tried to get a game on Steam knows it's going to be a very long and slow process and a very painful process. With other retailers, that's much quicker and much snappier. I have to keep my script, otherwise I'll get really lost when I start telling a story. Here we go. So what do we call indie? This could be an entire talk, and I know that has been done as an entire talk. We at Get Games define indie as not a simulator and not AAA. And the right or wrong of that, we could debate for hours, but I put our indie games into 4 categories. Indie games coming from AAA publishers, so that's the likes of Bastion, Scary Girl, Mini Ninjas, that are by big publishers or teams they've hired that are indie, but they're coming through that AAA label, they've got that AAA treatment. Titles published by indie publishers, Team 17, Devolver, Mastertronic, we're all examples of that. Indie titles from distributors, these are people who are handling the sales and marketing of indie titles. KISS would be an example, Digerati. If these names don't mean anything to you, yeah, that's alright. When you're coming to look at retail, they'll come up when you start researching and talking to people. And then finally, titles we are selling direct from the developers or studios. So of these indie games we have a problem with them, and it's the biggest problem that I've been trying to deal with for the last 3 years of my life, and that says indie games are really hard to sell. I mean, you guys, you all know that games are really hard to sell, and it's hard to be that ultimate success that you want to be. But as a retailer, compared to AAA, we find it really hard. Indie games were 10% of the games we sold last year. And that's 10% we want to have, nourish, nurture and grow, and we don't want to lose that 10%. But we've realised that the marketing buzz and the pre-order incentives that we, as hardcore gamers, if any of you here, like to hate, that works. And the thing I want to bring up today is how, whilst you may not have a AAA budget, you may not be a one-man band, there are a few little things you can do to make sure that when you're bringing your game to retail, you kind of are doing some of the things those AAA publishers are doing to succeed in this space. And you're not selling out or killing yourself or doing anything awful. So here's a breakdown and a very boring pie chart. I didn't realize how boring this pie chart was until I looked at some of the other presentations we've got going on. So these are how the indie games on Get Games look. So 39% of the games we sell come from distributors, equally direct from developers and indie publishers, 27, 26, and a little chunk of that is AAA. So that little chunk there is the games that like Bastion, that have come. Ubisoft have some like there's the World War II, the World War I little adventure game that I've forgotten the name of. That would be in there.
Valiant Hearts.
Thank you, Valiant Hearts. Valiant Hearts would be in there. So that's a really small chunk of our market. But then if we just look at the revenue that these four sectors are bringing, so you add up all the games and what the total revenue they brought in is, sorry, not revenue, quantity sold, number of copies sold of these games, AAA just blows up. And what I'm not trying to say here, oh, by the way, if you go to the publisher, you'll just sell just as well as if you went direct, or the distributors suck because they've lost that market share. But the AAA guys are doing something that's meaning those titles they're saying are indie are appealing to our audience of core gamers more than everyone else's games are. And I don't think that's just about marketing. I think there's something here that most people, if they have a little bit of time and energy, I know that's a really hard thing to say, can do. So I set out to compare our games with Mastertronic, how they sold on Steam and how they sold on Get Games, which is something that most people don't get to do. Most people aren't running a retail outfit selling their own games and at the same time selling their games everywhere else on the internet. So I picked three of our oldest games. You may have played these, I hope you have. 10 Second Ninja, a puzzle platformer. The Chaos Engine, which is a remake of the Amiga classic. And then Monster's Mount, which is a horror puzzler game, kind of like Myst, but a bit scarier and set in Ireland. I picked these three mainly because we have the largest volumes of sales data. They're oldest titles. So I took these three titles and I started just comparing them on Steam and comparing them on Get Games and seeing how we performed with our own indie titles on our own site, how we performed on Steam. And the results are, some are as expected and some are quite interesting. So who buys indie games? We don't know the gender or age of our customers. We don't ask for that information. All we really know is where they came from in the world and where they came from on the internet. So within the world, on Steam, our customers were mainly from the United States, the United Kingdom, and then in there you have English-speaking countries like Canada and Australia. And then Russia is exceptionally high, and that's because one of our games is fully localized into Russian. And I believe there's a talk about that tomorrow about why you should localize your games. But there's some evidence right there. However, on Get Games, the top three is almost identical, and again, a lot of the same countries, with Israel and Turkey popping in there. And they're not as surprising as you might think. If you look at Steam's own public stats, Israel and Turkey are the biggest Middle Eastern markets in terms of gigabytes downloaded, in terms of active use on Steam. But then I made a little word cloud. I'm assuming everyone here is familiar with the word cloud. It's basically the bigger the word, the bigger the number is. So this is all the traffic coming into those three games' product pages. So that's all the traffic that's coming to look at those games on Get Games. And it's lovely. I'm quite proud of this because, as I do all the marketing, it's a big diverse spread. We have our email marketing, developer web pages, developer sites, people coming direct to the site, Google, Reddit, Twitter, and then you have journalistic sites like Rock, Paper, Shotgun and Eurogamer are hidden in there, Hot UK Deals, Savvy Gamer, Is There Any Deal, these sort of core market sites, people who want to buy cheap games. So it's as I expected, but then I looked at Steam and the picture was kind of terrifying. So that's traffic, just as a caveat, that Steam is Steam Community, all the Steam Community pages, and all the Steam traffic, and then finally the unknown traffic, because many people just access Steam through the client, so they have no source point, they just come in. So that is all Steam's traffic, and then you can see Google just, can anyone at the back see Google? Google's just down here. It's about yay big, and that was freaky. And that was a discoverability problem right there as a giant word. And I'm going to zoom in because it doesn't get any better, I'm afraid. That's how big everything is compared to Google. That's people just googling the name of our games. Reddit's there, Steam gifting sites, there's a couple of foreign social networks. Just to put some scale on this, that number there is about 1.3 million. That's 1.3 million page views over. It's a bit longer than a year. And then the next number is Google had about 20,000, and then the rest are all in the hundreds. And that's freaky, because more people should be, ideally a healthy store would look a bit more like that. And that's probably the picture you'll see for most of our competitors as well. I mean, they're not going to share this kind of data with us, but that's a lot of traffic. No, that's a much smaller quantity. That's not 1.3 million worth of hits there. That's in the hundreds of thousands, all of it combined. So, getting the price right, because if you're gonna succeed in our space, and try to get around that discoverability problem, pricing is the first big step, and probably one of the hardest steps to deal with. This picture of a cat covered in money, because that is the best picture I've ever found on the internet. So, Green Man Gaming, Gamersgate, Humble Bundle, we all share this core market. We all share these gamers that we're trying to get from Steam, and they all know where to shop. They're not loyal in any sense, but it's a small percentage of the market. I can't give you an exact figure because I don't know it, but what I can say is that those 8.5 million concurrent Steam users aren't going to remember anything you do on our store. They aren't going to notice that. And we have a vested interest in getting the price of your game right. Too high, and we don't sell any. Too low, and we're not making as much with you as we could, because remember, you get the bulk of the revenue. So the risk of devaluing your game is mitigated in our space, so you could play around more with pricing, but pricing's a really sensitive topic, and it's a difficult one for me to come and talk to you about because I'm not an indie developer. As a publisher, we have our own ideas about what price the game should be, but I'm just going to give you the data and my opinion, and you can decide differently from me if you want. This is a quote from Rami, who is a quite well-known indie developer, Luftrausers, Nuclear Throne. He wrote on his blog earlier this year, "Rather than pricing games at the price we believe is right for our work, we price our games where we believe it will sell." And I guess that's true. We are putting our games out there on the market at the price they're going to sell at because we want to make money from them. And to some extent, the sentiment of that view is where I kind of have a bit of a different opinion. In my opinion, is a bit more like this guy. Does anyone recognise him? Anyone at all? Wow, I need to watch less TV. This is a guy called Rick. He runs a TV show called Pawn Stars. It's P-A-W-N Stars. His show, people bring their sort of beloved antiques to his shop, usually wanting to sell them for money, and he goes, yes, no, maybe. But you're not pawning your games to a retailer. That's not at all how it works. But quite often those people don't like the money side of things, and they go away, and then they post fake Arouse TV interviews. They say, I'm actually really happy, I'm glad to keep this, I really like it. And that's what I really want to say before I go any further about pricing, is that your game that you're working on, you may like the idea of making money from it, and if you want to do that, do it on your own terms. I'm going to bring up data about how you should price your game if you seriously want to just, go for it and be someone who's trying to make money. If you value your art and your creativity so much that the idea of selling it at a market price doesn't appeal to you, then you need to really reconsider your wants as a developer and your wants financially and your needs financially. Money takes time to come in from retailers, that's the first thing. You're not going to get rich overnight, even if your game sells like millions overnight. In likelihood, it's going to be a very long, slow process of revenue trickling in and hopefully increasing as your game gets more involved in promotions and gets more coverage. Your game might be better off elsewhere. You might be better off selling your game just on itch.io as a pay what you want project, or even just at the price you want. If you believe your game is worth £20 and you don't believe the market would believe that, because the market's not going to change for you, then do that. It's really, if you understand that to succeed financially in this space, you have to fit to this space. It's always a really hard thing to say. So just consider what you want from your work. Consider what it means to you and how you want to sell it. You may just want to sell it only as donations or pay what you want, or give it free. If you're doing like a Patreon for other creative work, give this little project you've done that you couldn't bear to sell on the open market away as a little free bonus, something special. It's really your choice. But if you do want to go into this space, I looked at every indie game I've ever sold on Get Games, and that's a lot of transactions. That's hundreds of thousands of transactions. And I took the average price from that transaction, and it came to £2.50. Now this number has produced massively mixed reactions from everyone I've shown it to so far. Some people are like, that's insanely low, oh my god. Some people are like, wait a minute, but I'm selling my game free to play and no one's buying it anyway, or 69p and no one's buying it anyway. It is just a number. What this is also there's no VAT. This is after all VAT and taxes, so it could be higher in certain regions, yada yada yada. But this is just the average. This is just the most common price people were paying for an indie game, and that's a single indie game. That's not 10 games in a Humble Bundle. If this was many people buy a Humble Bundle for that price and get 10 games, and you're getting 1/10 of that, or even less because of the charity and the Humble tip. But the The key thing is your game, if you were going to sell it commercially, just has to pass into this price point, like an asteroid, you know, on a course. You don't have to put it at £3 and sit it there. Ideally, a retailer like myself would always tell you to lean towards the higher end of what you're estimating for it, because it's far easier for you to sell your game for a little bit more, you know, £9.99 instead of £6.99, and work the price down over time in promotions, than, you know, start low and then go, oh god, you know, I should be selling it for more, and try to sneak it up, because that's one of the few things people do notice is when when developers try to put a fast one on them. I think it's Gabe Newell who said, never lie on the internet. But just to put this into context, I did the same for AAA. Every AAA game we'd ever sold, which is a lot more, and this number came out, about £6.20. So it's it's a little bit over double, also 125% more, and that's not high for a AAA game. And that's just, as soon as games hit $10 in the AAA space, that's when they start selling. And for indie games, I guess when they hit $4, that's when they really, really start selling. So that is the case with price. You've just got to sort of go in, if you want to sell the most, that's the range you're going to sell the most in. That's not where you should price your game, but that's where games are selling the most. So this is now the nitty-gritty. If you want to get in touch with us as retailers or anyone else, if you have a direct email contact, use it. If you're sending in a pitch, trailers and screenshots are absolutely essential, and builds and demos are great. Pretty much everyone who works in retail and digitally has some sort of publishing or development experience. We know what an unfinished game looks like. We're not going to judge an unfinished game unfairly. That is a pile of contracts that I dug out recently and I have to file away. That's a catapult. That's my office artillery. It's really good. There's no harm in asking for coverage from a retailer. There's no harm in asking for more than what you get on Steam. You may not get it, but you may. We love promoting indie games. We love including them. We love getting discounts on them. If you're willing to do a sort of launch discount or give away some free copies with us, that always works well with us, and it'll work well with other retailers too. Keeping track myself. Keep your retailers up to date. This is less relevant with Steam now, but if your game was DRM free, the amount of times we end up selling a buggy build of a game because the developer forgot to tell us, oh, I've launched a patch, you need this new patched executable that I haven't sent you. That's difficult. When with Steam, if your game's early access and you start selling it off Steam, you're updating your Steam page, your Steam blogs. If you're not updating other retailers, then they're going to have out-of-date information and potentially, you know, conflicting information, and that's not good. And finally, check the contract. You have to deal with physical contracts in our space. It's an absolute pain. A good contract will make sure you keep your IP. You know, you can take it off sale whenever you want. You're in charge of what price it's on sale at. Always read retail contracts. And payments, if you do get this up with retailers, check those payments, check you're getting paid the right amount, and that you've got accurate information, because mistakes do happen. And of course, once you've launched a game into retail in any sort of space, you're probably going to be a bit tired, you know, crunch and development and life. But after a while, you really need to get back on any sort of marketing you were doing and shouting about your game as it's on offer, because there may be many, many people out there who wish the best for you, who think you're absolutely wonderful, but don't love you enough to buy your game at full price. And trust me, the amount of people who wishlist our games on Steam and haven't bought them yet is outstanding. Create a spreadsheet to ensure you always know where you're at with your retail. If you're working in multiple stores, you can do different promotions in different places, and you can quite easily lose track. Of course, if this is one-man band, that's sort of the theme of this, I thought, if I were a one-man band, what would I do? And the answer is I do what I already do, because I'm effectively a one-man band retailer. I'm not working on it full-time. We're an absolutely tiny team. We have to be able to cut some stuff down. We use the consumers tools. So this really intimidating page of information is actually one of our biggest traffic sources. It is literally the ultimate Steam wish list. It's a Steam wish list that will tell you what price the game you want has been on what store and all of history. I can see where our game has been sold throughout history, every bundle it's been, and every discount voucher currently valid on it. Your game will end up on this site if you're selling it at retail. You can effectively track your game the way the consumers are and see exactly how where your game is in the various spaces. I still advise doing it yourself. You know, getting Google Analytics on your Steam store page, but if you really, really, really are pressed for time, this will work, and it's also a great way to scout out other products in the space. Yeah, we sometimes suck, but like everyone, we can be really, really busy and not reply to emails. And I think the killer one is this. Occasionally, we get all excited about a big promotion and no one buys it. And occasionally we're sat there going, oh, this promotion is going to suck, and then we've run out of keys and we're screaming at a little indie retailer who's gone to bed. Little indie on the other side of the world has gone to bed because their game's selling like hotcakes, we haven't got enough copies of it. It's an unfortunate way, the way the market works, and the only way around the second one really is to, if you can, get the time to have a diverse spread of where you're putting your game, especially in our space. I should point out that our space is the only one, with the possible exception of Android, where there are there's such a wide variety of stores. There's much less spread for console, there's much less spread for iOS and handheld. Keeping your keys. If you have a game on Steam, you may already have a great process for this, but if you don't, trust us, when you're working with retailers, keys will become a problem. You want to keep them always separated, and make note of when you created them in Steam, when they were sent, and triple check them. I'm buzzing loudly. We recently had a AAA publisher send us a new product. We found out several months later they sent the same batch of keys to one of our competitors, and because they all get mixed up, we don't know until 300 or 400 people are all complaining they've bought a game that doesn't work. If you mix up a key batch, that's probably the quickest way to sour a relationship when you're trying to sell the same keys to different people on the internet. That's pretty bad. And have a reference copy, because if your keys end up on a sort of shady grey market site, you're going to want to know where they've come from, especially if they're ending up there in the thousands, as it does happen to some developers. They can get robbed or get frauded, or people can pretend to be YouTubers and try to get keys from them, and you're just losing sales. What about if you want a publisher? Well, my first reaction to this, and the one I was sponsored to say, is this. My actual honest answer, this is a completely candid talk, it's actually my own personal views, it's not the views of my employer, is this. You don't need one, but you might want one. My general point with all of this is that if you're trying to sell your game into this space, you don't need a publisher, but a good publisher will manage all the keys, manage all the retail promotions, and manage getting your game set up, and look after it. And you may want to manage some stores yourself. One of our developers sells their game on Itch.io, and we manage everywhere else because they already had that page and they wanted to use it. Another developer sells their game on GOG because they already had it on sale on GOG before we even started publishing it. So that's something you have to negotiate. And the key thing if you're working with someone else is be aware of what they're doing and make sure they're aware of what you're doing. You don't need one, but it can save you a lot of time. But you can do this whole retail space on very little time and effort. That's my key takeaway, I think, overall. But you don't have to listen to me. I reached out to our arch rivals / best friends, Green Man Gaming, who are also in this space with us, and they advised me, and I agree completely with all their advice. This is mainly just to prove that I'm not trying to sell my company to you or my store to you. Regardless of genre, length or style, if your game hooks us, we'll want to know more. And make yourself visible. Tracy, who I reached out to, can't stress enough the amount of times she's met lovely devs at an event who haven't got a business card, who haven't got an email or anything really to follow up with, then and there they've just got a game they want to chat about. It's always great to have something to follow up with and some way to get in touch. And like them, we look at every pitch we receive, but it can take a seriously long time. As I said, we're all working on other projects, other games, and trying to run a store. We like to get back to you, we like to actually give games serious consideration rather than just going, no, not interested, no, it looks like a roguelike, I hate roguelikes, things like that. We're not like that. We like to actually look and consider. And don't be disheartened if you're reaching out to stores like us or different people, because your game may be not right at that exact time, but it could be absolutely right in the future. And if you want to get in touch with Tracy as well as myself, I'm happy to provide her email address after this talk. And just before I came in here, I got an email from someone in San Francisco, God knows why they'd be there, apparently I don't know if something happening there or not, who also got some little tips that I haven't been able to throw in from Humble and Steam, who both said, maybe, don't think they were drunk at a party, but it's really, really succinctly said, if you want to get on Humble or Steam, have a good game. But some actual good advice, manage your assets. And that sounds like an odd thing, but assets are a huge part of this. Not just sending a trailer or screenshots, but having PSDs. don't keep track of your PSDs, please, because the amount of times we want to get some screenshots up or a box art up or do a sale, and we haven't got a PSD of your artworks. We're trawling the internet, seeing someone else just maybe like a journalist cropped it into the right size for us, so we can get it into the space we need to fit it in. Have those PSDs and have control over your assets like trailers. If you have some knowledge of Photoshop or movie editing, that is absolutely awesome and something invaluable when you're trying to work with retailers. So my summary, the retail world outside of Steam can be a good source of revenue and reach. It's fragmented, it can be really complex. If you can take the time just to try some of the stuff here and take a little bit of that sort of AAA retail management that they're bombarding us as a store with every day and apply it to our indie game, you're far more likely to see more revenue from this sector. Our market is small and so are the risks. Use this to experiment with pricing. No one on Steam, all those millions of Steam users we're all trying to reach out to, they don't really know what's going on in our little sector. Only the hardcore gamers who want to buy lots of games at a cheap price, they're the ones in here. They may remember, but the rest of those millions aren't. It's a low-risk place to be experimenting with marketing and pricing. And a game won't always sell on its own merit. It needs management. We don't live in the world anymore where you can put your game up on Steam, it'll just sell, and then go in a sale and it'll sell some more. It's a very different world to that now. It's a very complex and unfair world, but with a little bit of love, your game stands a better chance than someone else's. Thank you. I also believe that's the record number of cat pictures. I don't know why it started buzzing at the end there, but I'll take questions. Anyone's got one? Or two? Oh, 2, 3, 4. Start at the front. Hiya.
Sorry, you mentioned about someone with a game already on itch.io before they came to you guys to distribute.
Yeah.
Presumably they set their own price on itch.io. And how do you negotiate that with them? Because obviously they set their own price point. And if you try and convince them to go lower, how does
that's a very good question. In that situation, we agreed a price together. Modern publishing isn't about do all you want and we'll shoot you in the back of the head. It's not about that anymore. It's very much as a service, and it's very, at least with the company I work with, it's all about honesty and agreements. It's something you've got to agree, because it's unfair on your publisher to be trying to help you when you're just selling your game at less than they're allowed to sell it for. That's just, you've got to see how that's a little bit unfair. Where maybe, ideally, in the modern, if you're getting a new product, we want to control all the channels, but it's on a case-by-case basis. With that particular instance, we just agreed that's the price, and if they want to do a promotion, they just ask us, and we'd say yes, or we're doing a promotion here, maybe wait till next week. It really is about just person-to-person negotiation, understanding that everyone's in this situation to help each other and make money together, not to exploit you.
Who's next?
Great talk, thank you.
Thank you.
Inspiring, slightly scary. You mentioned about, so 2 questions. Assets, you talked about make sure you know your image size. Is there the implication is there's like a standard size that we need to know about?
Yes, that's a really good question, and I really should have brought that up, but this was very much a last minute thing. They brought it up and I was like, oh yeah. Firstly, I don't mean to scare anyone. The main thing is, unlike a few years ago, if you're bringing a game to PC, it needs a bit more love and attention than it may have done a few years ago, and that may sound obvious, but when you've just finished working on the bloody thing, you might want to leave it alone for a while. Assets, yes, Steam have a standard size, and most people, when they send over asset packs, are to that size, and quite often the onus is on us as a retailer to change the sizing. But all retailers have an issue where trailers aren't up to snuff. They may not have some of the legal requirements they have. Things like, whilst age ratings aren't a legal requirement, they're a really nice thing to have, and legal lines are a nice thing to have. But it's mainly about image sizes and having access to your images so we can alter them and fit them to our sizes, or have them do it, because, our size is totally different to Steam's, Gamersgate is totally different to Steam's, Green Man Gaming is totally different to Steam's, and Humble Bundle, I don't even know what they do with images on there, they have sort of pictures. So yeah, it is very much about there is no standard size at retail.
Okay, so we find the reference on each of those things. So the second question, you mentioned about a good place to experiment. Is it a good idea, you talked about itch.io first, maybe, then maybe like a smaller market like your own,
Mm.
and then maybe elsewhere, like applying to a green light then, or what about consoles? I mean, is there like a
Yeah.
good pathway? You know?
That's a really good question, and I don't know about. I mean, I know very little about console pricing and mobile pricing. I mean, I do a little bit of work in those sectors, but my retail work has firmly been in PC and this PC space. The answer with pricing is, and how to do your game is, if you sell your game DRM free, all those people who bought it and liked it are going to remember you and are going to want a Steam copy. That's the first risk to sort of expanding slowly. And second of all is that you risk your game almost just not getting the right amount of coverage at the right time. My advice mainly is to hit all those spaces at once if you can manage it. Is that? I mean, that sounds absolutely crazy. I know, and it's. I wish I could make more time for everyone. I really wish we could all have more time in our day. If you had to pick a route, I'd say that would work. You just got to remember that people have an expectation that once they bought your game on one platform, they kind of expect it on all the others, so to speak.
So, last question. There's no good solution to that. In other words, what you're saying is, if we had DRM, we would be able to say, oh, you've got an Android copy, therefore you can have a PC copy. Or have I missed the point there?
There's a general greedy expectation among people that if they bought your game on one platform, mainly in PC DRM, so to speak, they kind of expect it. So if you bought your game out on itch.io DRM free, those people would kind of expect a Steam key. That's the only risk that I can see as a retailer. There may be marketing risks to it. There may be the fact that your game doesn't get enough coverage. But the only risk I can 100% see, because I'm only a retailer, is that people who bought your game on itch.io and enjoyed it might expect you to give them a free copy. You don't have to. There's no reason why you have to, but our customers and gamers out there can be very, very entitled.
Thank you.
No worries.
Come and talk to your lighting something. I'm trying to be sure I understood.
Cool. Any other questions? Oh. No? Cool. Thank you very much.